The glass was cold against my forehead. Outside, rain was just slicking the whole world down into shades of gray. I was watching it trace these little paths down the window while this moving van groaned, backing into the driveway of the old Anderson house. It was late September, the kind of cold that really gets in your bones. That house, it had just been a silent, dark shape next door ever since Mrs. Anderson died.
And you have to understand, in a town like Larch Hollow, this just didn't happen. People left. They never ever arrived. So seeing that moving van felt less like a new beginning and, I don't know, more like an omen.
So I kept watching as this man, tall and thin in a long, dark coat, sort of unfolded himself from the driver's seat. And I don't know how to explain it, but this alarm just went off inside me, a primitive, animal kind of wrongness. He turned his head toward my house, and I just dropped right below the windowsill, my heart slamming against my ribs. It felt like his head had turned just a little too far on his neck, like he was staring right at the exact spot where I'd just been.
When I finally dared to peek again, he was walking toward the house, and there was something just fundamentally off about the way he moved. It was disjointed. His limbs, they just seemed too long, bending at angles that weren't quite right. It was exactly like watching a puppet on tangled strings, a clumsy imitation of a human walk. I stayed hidden, but I could still feel it, that cold, heavy sense of being watched, like a pressure against the glass. That night, the silence next door was finally broken. I was lying in bed, just staring at the ceiling, listening. It started faintly, this dry, whispery sound, but it didn't stop. It just grew, becoming a steady, rhythmic noise coming right through my bedroom wall.
Scrape, scrape, tap, 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 over and over again. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was rats or pipes or anything normal. But when I finally fell asleep, I dreamt of these long, black, splintered fingernails just digging through the plaster, reaching for me.
The next day, Mom insisted I bring over a welcome basket of muffins. The man who answered, he looked even worse in the daylight. His skin was pale, kind of waxy, his eyes sunken into these dark pits, and the house behind him smelled of wet soil and rot. He took the basket without a word and then said, "Tell your mother, thank you. I've been—" He stopped. His eyes darted to the blackness of the hallway behind him. A muscle in his cheek just jumped. Hungry. The word came out like a sigh. It was so weird.
In the weeks that followed, this wrongness started to seep out from that house, just poisoning our quiet street. The air felt heavier. The scratching became this nightly ritual, getting louder each time, more and more frantic.
We started finding things on our lawns, little neat piles of feathers and tiny cracked bones. And then my cat, Evie, she just vanished. And sometimes I'd see him. He'd just be standing there at the very edge of his property line, perfectly still, staring at my house for hours.
One night I couldn't sleep. I was watching from my window when he stepped out under the only working streetlight on our block. He turned to go back inside, but for a fraction of a second, his shadow didn't. It stayed put, a black stain on the pavement, before it just snapped back to his heels. And that's when I knew. Whatever was living next door wasn't a man.
Then the storm hit. A real monster of a storm, with thunder that shook the whole house. And through it all, I could hear the scratching. But it wasn't coming from next door anymore. No, it was louder, closer. It was coming from downstairs, inside my house.
Suddenly, this huge crack of lightning, and everything just went black. The silence that followed was terrifying, so much deeper than just darkness. I called for my mom. My voice was this pathetic little whisper. No answer. Just the howl of the wind and that sound, that scrape, scrape, tapping from the kitchen. Then something else. A voice. It was thin, metallic, echoing from the heating vent above the stove. It was Mom's voice, but wrong, strained. "Mel, help me." I scrambled onto the counter, my phone's flashlight shaking like crazy. I pointed it into the vent, and I saw a flash of pale skin. And then her face. Mom's face, but her eyes were stretched wide, her mouth a perfect silent O of terror. I screamed and stumbled back, and at that exact moment the front door slammed open against the wall. A flash of lightning lit him up, the neighbor, drenched from the storm, just standing there in the doorway with a smile that cut his face in half. He spoke,
and it sounded like two voices twisting around each other, one high, one low. She's not your mother anymore. I didn't think. I just ran. Up the stairs, into my room, slamming the door and fumbling with the lock. I could hear his footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate, unhurried. Then they stopped right outside my door. I held my breath, waiting for the wood to splinter. But there was only silence. And then, the scratching started again. Not from the walls, not from downstairs. It was coming from inside my closet.
The closet door slowly creaked open. A figure shambled out. It wore my mother's face, but the skin was gray and slick, the mouth twitching into shapes that weren't words. "Sweetheart," it gurgled, this wet, awful sound. "He says you're next." And then, from the profound darkness of the closet behind her, the neighbor crawled out on all fours, his limbs bending backwards, his head upside down, that glistening grin wider than ever.
The next thing I remember is the sun on my face and a police officer kneeling in front of me. They said they found me in the corner of my room, that I was in shock. They searched my house, top to bottom.
My mom was gone, vanished. And when they checked the Anderson house, they found nothing. It was empty. Not a speck of dust, not a piece of furniture. It was as if no one had ever been there at all.
The only thing they found was on the inside of my closet wall, scratched into the paint in something dark and flaking, were 4 words. "You shouldn't have looked."
So it's been a year. I live with my aunt now, 3 states away. After months of therapy, I almost had myself convinced. It was trauma, a psychotic break brought on by the storm. It was all in my head. I was getting better. And then my aunt got a call from the Larch Hollow police.
They were renovating the old Anderson house, tearing down walls, and inside one of them, they found a body. A teenage girl. They said she'd been there for a very, very long time. Her name was Melissa Carter. My name.
And last night, here, in this new house, in this new, supposedly safe life, I heard it. A sound from the heating vent, faint but unmistakable. Scrape, scrape, tap, tap, tap. And then a whisper, pulling me from sleep, slithering right into my ear. Open the door.